Well, good evening, everybody. We're just after 6 o'clock and I saw that we had a good number of participants so far. I'll wait another minute or two to see if we have another few people filter in, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our meeting tonight. So that said, I see that we've had a couple more join, and we're a couple minutes after now, so I think we'll go ahead and get going. Well, welcome everybody. This is the second public meeting for the South Lane County Park Improvements Project. As we begin tonight, we want to go over just some basic tech housekeeping about how the Zoom meeting works. Participants are muted during the presentation, so there will only be one speaker at a time. And there will be Q&A at the end. That will be our feedback and review session. We ask that you submit your questions and comments through the Q&A feature at the top of the screen, as indicated by this big blue arrow up here. So you should be seeing that. For those of you connected by a mobile device, you can use the same Q&A feature, which will be at the bottom of your screen, down here. As for who's speaking, during the course of this presentation, my name is Nick Farracone. I'm the Park Project Manager in the Department of Parks and Recreation, County of San Diego.
Anna Proant. I'm a land use environmental planner as well as biologist in the Resource Management Division at Parks and Recreation.
Joanna Solomon, a region manager for Parks and Recreation. I oversee the maintenance and operations of facilities in the East County.
Good evening, my name is Jessica Geisler. I am the Marketing and Public Outreach Manager for the County of San Diego Department of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, my name is Emily Hubbard. I'm a Senior Park Project Manager for South San Diego, Parks and Rec.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Franzini. I'm a landscape architect with Michael Baker International and responsible for the design of the park.
Thank you, everybody. And as we get, just before we get into our meeting content, I wanted to go through a roadmap of what's ahead tonight. We have project review, recap, and update, park improvements planning process, South Lane County Park background, South Lane County Park today, opportunities and constraints. And for those of you who attended our first public meeting or may have joined us at the Crest Community Association, you might recognize some of those titles and some of that material as we go through it. We will be doing some review tonight. But I will move us quickly through that so that we can get through the real purpose of our meeting, which is starting at number 6, survey results and public input, potential additions and improvements, and then we'll talk to you about next steps, including our new survey. Once we get through those slides, that will take us to our Q&A period. So project recap and updates. The big question is, what improvements or additions would you guys like to see at South Lane County Park? With your feedback, both live and through our surveys, we'll achieve 2 milestones. We'll create a long-term park plan that reflects your preferences and complete a first round of park improvements based on our current budget. Future improvements would or could occur at a later date, depending on future resources and what's feasible at the site. So we want to make sure that people understand, so we'll have one long-range park master plan that will guide all the improvements that happen into the future, and we'll be able to take the first few steps as an extension of this process. And the first few steps that we take will be defined once we have our long-term plan. So we're really going to have 2 products that result in one first set of focused improvements based on our current budget. And if anyone has questions about that later, please ask me, or some of you already have my email. I'll be glad to talk to you about that. The park improvements planning process. We are currently in public meeting number 2. That's this little extra arrow over here. In the first public meeting, we introduced the project, shared opportunities for you to give us feedback, and got you to our first survey. Today, we'll be sharing results of the survey and walk you through the park design concepts based on preferences you've shared with us. You'll have the chance to review concepts during this meeting, provide feedback during the meeting, and respond to our survey, all of which will give direction to our design team. The next meeting will be public meeting number 3, where we will present a revised plan based on your input, review, and revisions. We'll also share a timeline for the project, which will include construction and estimated completion of the first round of improvements. Background of the park itself, it's 10.45 acres located in Crest, which falls in County Supervisorial District number 2. It's part of the Crest, Dehesa, Granite Hills, Harbison Canyon Community Planning Area. Sadly, in 2003, wildfires tore through the area, heavily impacting the project. You can see that this area is prior to the fires that came through, and it's a significant difference between this and the way things are now. You can see some of that here in a more current aerial. As we look at South Lane County Park today, there's very little tree canopy coverage. But just to orient ourselves to the park, there is Crest School to the north, residential on the east and west sides, and South Lane itself to the south. As far as existing conditions and improvement, the northwest corner is near the school and library. There's also a secondary access to the park. That's a somewhat shaded area. There's an access road across the northern boundary between the school and the park, and a drainage crosses into the park. There's a runoff area, often wet, in the north central section of the park as well. The main feature on the east side of the park is the very nice, well-established trail which runs north-south. And that takes us to the southwest corner where some improvements have already been made. That includes access off the main road. There's an entry and roundabout parking area, some picnic tables, and also trails leading into the rest of the park. This area also has a hitching post and is used for parking and staging for equestrians and other park users. The two other main built features of the park are, of course, the main horse ring and the small horse ring, and there is some seating at each of those two rings as well. In terms of opportunities and constraints, we want to look at our best opportunity areas for making improvements and to identify environmental constraints. And looking at these maps, particularly the one on the right, the gray areas are already built, and inside the park are areas that could potentially use more improvement. The brown areas are also opportunities outside of what's contained in the floodplains. The blue lines represent drainage or water flow areas that would need to be avoided. And the light green color represents eucalyptus woodland, which would be approached with caution because we'd like to protect trees on the site as we undertake our project. And that takes us into our look at our survey. Our first public meeting was on April 8th, 2021, and we had our initial survey up online at that time. It was live for a total of 6 weeks, which is longer than we usually leave them up, but we felt that it was important for us to get as many responses as possible. The great news is that we received 121 survey responses, and that's in addition to approximately 30 emails, calls with residents and neighbors, and feedback we received during meetings. That's really a great amount of feedback and gives us a lot to work with. So we want to thank everybody for their feedback and for your involvement. The more we have to work with, the better the project will be. So we're very happy about the amount of feedback we've received. Getting into the survey itself. The first question asked respondents about their zip code, so we had a sense of where responses were coming from. These are questions 2 and 3, which ask how close respondents live and how often they visit the park. You can see here that many respondents live close enough to walk to the park. That's about 92.5%. And many of the visitors come either daily or weekly. That adds up to about 76% in these first 2 responses right here. So we know that a lot of people walk to the park, and a lot of the people who are interested in the park and sharing their interest live very close by, and a lot of you are there daily, if not weekly. So it's a well-loved park that's a special part of the lives of people who live nearby. Question 4 asks, what amenities would you like to see improved? What existing amenities would you like to see improved at South Lane County Park? The strongest desire here is at 85% to improve the existing trails at the park. That was by far the strongest response. The survey website cut off the words in the next 2 responses in the graph here, so I added a little bit more detail on the right just to show the next 2 highest ranked responses were improve the existing parking area and improve equestrian facilities. Question 5 was a follow-up for those who wanted to see improvements to equestrian facilities. There were a total of 29 responses to this question. The most common responses here were to improve access for visitors with horses, to improve the arenas and equestrian area, and to add seating, shade, and water around the equestrian facilities. Question 7 asked, Question 6 asked, what existing amenities would you like to see more of? Walking trails, shaded seating, and shade trees all scored very high. These were much higher than the rest, all over 50%. So these are the strongest sentiments of the group by far. More walking trails, shaded seating, and more shade trees. In question 7, we moved away from existing things at the park and asked what new facilities you might like to see added. The highest scoring item here is the nature play area. And if anyone doesn't remember, we showed one in our previous presentations, and you'll see one in the slides tonight. These are children's play areas made of wood, logs, and natural elements. We also saw very high marks from this question for educational signage. And together with the nature play area, those are the only 2 things that scored over 50%. Those 2 were followed by some interest for fitness stations, as well as some interest in traditional play areas and bike-oriented trail improvements. So now that you've seen the results of the survey and the priorities that were outlined by the community, we're very excited to share with you some preliminary design concepts for the park. And a couple things I really want to underscore here. Neither of these, and nothing you'll see here, are actual plans for the park. There is no plan for the park yet because we're still in the process of getting feedback from you, the community. We will once again be asking you for your feedback, both tonight and in a survey, which we'll give you a link to at the end of this presentation. And we'll encourage you to be honest about what you like, what you don't like, or what you wish to see added. We'll have Q&A at the end of this meeting where we'll provide the link to the survey. So keep that in mind. And with that in mind, I'll ask our design consultant, Jeremy Franzini, a landscape architect with Michael Baker International, to join as we move through these slides. Jeremy?
Hi, thank you, Nick. So what we did is, based off all the input that Nick summarized, we developed 2 separate concept plans that reflect some different ideas or approaches to the potential improvements at the park. So we're going to go through concept plan A first, and then we'll go to concept plan B. And so everyone can kind of see the differences between them, some different ideas in each of them. And as Nick mentioned, the culmination of this is to blend the ideas together based off of the feedback we received from this meeting and come back with a final plan that's guiding the park improvements and is a plan for moving forward in future improvements for the area, and have a nice master plan as a guide for everyone to go by. So starting with concept plan A, looking at the overall site here, there's a few things we want to point out, because then we're going to have some enlarged or zoomed in areas where we can get some more focus on some of the potential amenities that are in this concept plan. So in concept plan A, you'll notice that the entrance is in a similar location off of Park Drive that it currently is today. We have the main existing trail that runs north-south. It's kind of on the east side of the water feature that runs through the site, or the natural water feature, creek. So there's the existing trail that's running through there. And one of the ideas in this concept that you can really only see at this level is the addition of some secondary trails kind of on the east side that would kind of connect some areas through the park that aren't really being accessed now. So almost like a secondary trail system. And then again, yes, on the west side of the park, connecting from the horse arena area up to that northwest corner. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is there's obviously a preference to keep as many of the existing trees as possible. There's some nice native oak trees out there that we want to keep. And we also want to add additional trees and vegetation to supplement those trees that were lost in the fire. So along that eastern border, along that residential edge, we've shown a lot of trees to be added, new shade trees, which will provide shade for the park and shade for screening for the residents along that edge, and create, kind of bring that tree canopy back that was lost in that fire. The other kind of key thing just to keep in mind before we get into these specific enlarged plans is we've kind of located a picnic area in the center of this park, kind of off the main entrance. It's kind of near right there near the equestrian arena, and easily accessible. And then in the lower east corner, we're showing an off-leash dog park area in this concept. And then in the upper northwest corner would be an outdoor play area, but generally keeping the equestrian arenas in their current location, but looking at improving those. So that kind of orients the bigger picture of what's going on with this concept. And what we want to do is we'll show you some enlarged areas so you can see a little bit more detail. And we have some images supporting what these concepts could be, but they aren't intended to be the final design images, but just some images to reflect the concepts that we're dealing with. If we go to the next slide. So this is looking at the entry area, kind of the starting point where most vehicles will enter the park, keeping the same entry access off of Park Drive that's there today, adding a new entry sign. The County of San Diego has standard monument signs that they use for all their parks, and we could bring one of those in here, giving it the park name and a little bit more of an entry experience. In this concept, we've shown the parking lot being a little bit reconfigured to have traditional vehicle parking stalls along the right side of the screen here, but we've also got several, like 3 equestrian trailer pull-throughs parking stalls, so that when people come with their equestrian horse trailers, they have a place to park and then can unload in this area. There would be a hitching post to tie horses up while you're dealing with your vehicle and unloading the horses, and would have good access into the equestrian arena. This parking lot would still be built of natural materials, whether it's rock or decomposed granite, but it's not intended to be a paved asphalt parking lot. You want to keep it very natural looking, similar to the feel that's out there today. As people would enter towards the equestrian arenas, we would have an information kiosk that would have information about the park, any events that may be happening as part of that entry experience from the parking lot that's been redesigned. We're also showing a potential community garden in the lower portion of the site. If people are interested in having a community garden, the county would provide the facilities for the community to do that at this site as a potential idea. And we're also showing where this number 10 would be an outdoor exercise station. So, that can be outdoor exercise equipment if people want to come to the park and get some outdoor fitness activities. They would be able to do that in this location. It's kind of the key features in this entry area. We'll move on to the next area. We'll show you this. So there's some images showing what these could be. So the first image here you see is an example of one of the county park monument signs that we would put at the entrance. The middle image is a very natural parking lot. This is with decomposed granite. People sometimes will abbreviate it as DG. But you can see how there's boulders and vegetation kind of defining, where people shouldn't park to define where people should park, and those open spaces. So it's a very natural approach to a parking lot design. We're trying to keep the natural character of the park. The horse hitching post would be important as people unload their vehicles. The outdoor exercise stations, that wouldn't necessarily be this particular arrangement, but just the idea of outdoor exercise would be important. The community garden facilities could look something similar to this lower photo, as well as here's an image of a typical information kiosk for park users, and that these will all be happening in this main entry area. Next slide, please. So then we move up to the equestrian arena area. And in this concept A, we are proposing to do new arenas and take out the existing ones and replace it with new fencing, new gates. And we're showing this at the larger arena shown here is about 200 feet long by 120 feet wide. So more, kind of a small multi-purpose type arena. And then the upper smaller round pen, the training pen, would have like a 50-foot diameter in that, and then gate access between the two. We'd also propose to do another equestrian drop-off where this number 5 is called out so that people could access the smaller pen from another location up along Park Drive. So the main things here are just showing the new equestrian arena layout, and then we'd want to add some new bleacher seating. So if there were any events at the arena, people could come watch and enjoy the arena aspect of it. So we kind of want to, and then we also want to incorporate the idea of interpretive signs and educational signs, which is one of the things that came up. And we would be locating something up there, perhaps about the history of the site and the arenas, which would be kind of a nice little feature to people to read as they kind of enter this main area. If we go to the next slide, we just have some images of, what, these arenas could look like with the new fencing, the benches, the picnic tables, and then the bleachers that people would sit on. And just an example of what an interpretive sign we're talking about, something like this with 1 or 2 posts that is, eye level for people to read and learn about the site as they kind of enter into this area. So then if we want to move on to the next slide, in the sort of lower eastern corner of the site, we're showing the idea of an off-leash dog park in this area. And that would be natural materials like the decomposed granite materials and a fence around the area, trying to keep the existing trees that are there, and then maybe adding a few shade trees for people inside the dog park area. We also were showing the idea of a gazebo for shade and perhaps a picnic table outside of the dog park so people could sit there under the canopy and have a picnic and enjoy some of the park amenities and shade in that area. If we go to the next slide, just some imagery of what these amenities could look like. The central image is an example of a dog park with decomposed granite and trees and some natural boulders, again, keeping a very natural design. And then the image on the left is what the gazebo shade area could look like with picnic tables underneath it. So just some images of these potential amenities in this area. And then the other area we want to talk about is this would be that upper northwest corner of the site, and what could happen in there. We saw that there was a preference for some natural play area, and there's already the existing entrance up there, so we would just take that existing entrance, bring people into a playground, again, keeping very natural materials and a small footprint, not a gigantic playground, but adding some amenities potentially for children to use. There's a lot of natural rock up there that we don't want to disturb and want to protect that. As you'll see, it's called out as number 9 on this particular image. So just trying to work in some natural play features around the existing vegetation, the existing rock outcroppings, and then connecting that corner with a trail down to the equestrian arena, potentially with a bench and things of that nature. So the images, if you go to the next slide, that you've seen these before, of just showing, we're talking, when we say natural play areas, something like this where there would be logs and again, or different tree type features and rock, so that we're not trying to put necessarily plastic slides and things of that nature, just keeping it very natural play amenity for something different out in this site. So moving on to concept plan B, we're going to kind of go through these exact same areas again, and then people can kind of compare and contrast the different approaches from concept A to concept B. So we'll kind of go through these same areas. The one thing to note about concept B is that it doesn't show as many of those secondary trails that concept A had. So keep that in mind. You know, concept B was a little bit of a lighter touch on the overall concept. And then you'll see how that kind of permeates through these different concept areas. So as we look at the entry area, very similar, you know, approach at using the existing entry off of Park Drive and putting an entry monument right at the entrance so that people know the name of the park, know that it's a county park. Again, keeping very natural materials, but we just kind of enhanced the circular design that's currently being used out there today and kind of formalized it a little bit, defining that center area with vegetation, protecting the existing oak tree that's out there, having the hitching posts out there, but then keeping the parking along the edge and trying to define some parking stalls. But one key difference is that the equestrian drop-off is handled just a little bit differently. It's more of a pull-through or a drop-off zone instead of the pull-through parking spaces. So this area is wider at this northern edge near the equestrian arena so that people can pull in there, have their equestrian loading and unloading, and then pull right out. So it's a different type of pull-through approach. It's more of a drop-off unloading zone type of approach. We would still want to have that information kiosk as users kind of enter towards the equestrian arena through this zone right there in number 6. And we also are showing over by number 11, the outdoor fitness area that could be happening kind of at this main entrance. We also want to make sure we have an interpretive sign that, just like in concept A, where we have number 9 here as an interpretive sign. Again, just a way to provide information and educational information to park users as they show up to the park site. If we go to the next slide, you'll see these images are very similar to concept A because it's the same amenities, but just in a different layout and arrangement. You know, with a park monument sign, natural parking lot with vegetation and boulders, exercise area, the kiosk that we talked about, the interpretive sign, as well as the horse tie-up location. So moving into the equestrian arena, this is a little bit different approach. In concept A, we were showing new arenas, and in this concept, we're preserving the existing arenas. So we wouldn't be making wholesale changes to the layout of those 2 equestrian arenas. We would keep them as is. We would upgrade the bleachers and the walkways around it so that people can have access to that. But and also noting that there's the picnic area down in that lower corner near this equestrian arena, as well as the same drop off number 5 to the smaller equestrian pen where users could come in and access that upper pen, but the smaller training pen. So a little bit different approach here. You know, do you have a preference to upgrade to new equestrian arenas or maintain what's there and maintain what's existing? So that's the key point, a key difference between the 2 concepts. If we go to the images, you'll see these are the images of the existing large equestrian arena, and then the image of the smaller pen. Now we certainly could improve the materials inside of these areas, but the intent was to keep the pen fencing as it currently is today. We'd still upgrade picnic tables and bleachers just to do some of the park improvements. And then in this lower eastern corner of the park, southeastern corner, instead of showing a dog park, we're showing this as just an open lawn area. So it'd be unprogrammed space so that people could, you know, go out there and do different activities, whether it's playing catch or sitting on the grass. It wouldn't be programmed for any sorts of activities. We also have the community garden located in this area. If you see number 2 is where we'd have, there's currently emergency access and pedestrian access there. And all we're doing is maintaining and enhancing that access. So off of that pedestrian access, we could have the community garden and this lawn area as people kind of could enter. If people are walking to the park, they'd be entering from South Lane there and accessing the park this way, and then getting on that main trail that runs north-south. We also have the gazebo in this area for, again, if people wanted to have a shaded picnic, it would be an option in this area. If on the next slide, we would have, again, just some images of what these would potentially look like with the gazebo and the picnic area, the open lawn with people being able to access it and walk to the lawn area, and then the community garden with new picnic table areas out there as well. Then moving up to that northwest corner where we're closer to the school site, we again want to maintain that pedestrian access that happens at that corner. We want to maintain the existing vegetation and rock outcroppings that are there and not disturb those. And there's an idea of potentially you could do an outdoor classroom in this area of natural materials, of decomposed granite and boulders, so that if anyone wanted to come out there and have a small gathering area, you could do that, but again, keep it very natural materials, as well as, you know, perhaps adding an interpretive sign up in this area, again, for educational purposes. If we go to the next slide, here's just an image kind of showing what that outdoor classroom could look like. This was around a fire pit, which we would not do, but the idea of locating rocks or boulders in a semicircular pattern to create a seating area is the concept here for that outdoor classroom, as well as having some educational materials, again, about the site that would tie into the history of the area and the park site. So that kind of summarizes the two concepts and the different ideas. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nick to kind of go over the next steps for the process.
Jeremy, thanks very much. Great job. I get excited looking at these again. I hope the rest of our participants here are as well. So here we are. We've taken a look at some initial park design concepts, and we've looked at different ingredients that could go into our ultimate long-range park master plan. So we'd like to open this back up to community input. A new survey based on the information that we shared today is live now. The link is here on the screen, and we'll add it into the chat. So some of you could actually go and open the survey and take the survey right now, if you'd like. The survey will be open for 2 weeks. Once we have your input, we'll work on the concepts you've seen here tonight. We'll take your feedback and we'll synthesize those into an overall park plan that best combines community desires. And FYI, the survey is also posted at the South Lane County Park webpage at sdparks.org. As for now and tonight, we do want to open this up for your feedback and for Q&A. So to ensure we get a full account of all questions that are being asked, we'd again like to ask you to type them into our Q&A panel. And our host, Jessica Geisler, will lead this section to ensure we don't miss anything. Jessica.
Great, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you, Jeremy, for that wonderful presentation and those exciting concept ideas. I'm really excited to hear what the group here thinks about those ideas and can't wait to see the additional survey results. We have 9 questions so far, so if you haven't posted a question but you would like to, please use that Q&A pane, and I'm just going to go in order. There are a few questions that ask some of the same types of or address some of the same topics. So in those situations, I might kind of lump questions together, but we will get to everything. So I'm just going to start with a question we received from Bonnie. Bonnie wants to know if the horse arena is going to be saved. because it's endemic to the history of Crest. And will also the wooden sign not be changed. That was something that was replaced after the Cedar Fire, and it reflects that rural feel of South Lane. So I know we did speak a little bit about the addition of a monument sign to the park, but with regard to that wooden sign that's there right now, do we have plans for that? And I'm going to hand this one over to Nick.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Bonnie. And we don't yet. Those are things that we'd like your feedback about. So one of the big differences that Jeremy outlined for us in the two concept plans are, one would propose to replace the existing arenas and upgrade them, but replace them in about the same locations that they're in now. The other says, wait a second, we'd rather keep them as they are. These were community, sort of community-driven features. They are important to the community, and maybe the community will want to upgrade them in their own way, in their own time. Of course, we'd coordinate that together since it's a county park, but we wanted to be sensitive to what your concerns are. So we'd like to hear your feedback about that, about those exact things, and you'll see those options in the survey that we've opened tonight. Would you like to see them replaced? And if you don't feel like any of the survey options are specific enough, please just type in toward the bottom of the survey anything that you'd like to add. But we're absolutely looking at that, and there's not a decision yet, Bonnie. That's part of what we're looking at.
Great, thank you, Nick. All right, so question about the budget. Nick, do you want to take this one as well? What budget do we have for this project?
Sure, this project received $650,000 from two different funding sources, from the PEI, or Park Expansion and Improvement Fund. That was $350,000. We've also got $300,000 from the PLDO, or Parkland Dedication Ordinance, from Crest. Our total of $650,000 is meant to cover this design process, which includes habitat surveys and some other scientific surveys, cultural resource surveys. There will be engineering required for design, potentially some environmental review. And what remains then will be rolled over to that front end, or that first set of focused improvements that we can make. So once we come up with a complete plan which says this is the full set of ingredients, this is the menu of things that we envision for the park over the next few years, as we can choose each of them, we'll then decide, okay, guys, which is the first thing we want to do with what we have left and what can we afford? So making the determination about our first set of focused improvements will come once we have a complete set of a complete park plan.
Great, thank you. And while I have you, since this question is also related to that, Ted is saying that he doesn't feel that the community garden is a good idea in Crest just because of the squirrels and the critters that eat everything. He's also saying that homes up in that area have plenty of garden space, and it can be a challenge to protect yard plants. So really great feedback. Definitely mention that in your survey that you do not wish to see a community garden. As Jeremy shared, there are a lot of other options for that space that we kind of explored. So really, really good feedback. And I don't know if Nick or Jeremy wants to say anything else about the addition of that community garden in the concepts.
It was only in so much as everything you've seen tonight, what came at the suggestion of the community. And that doesn't mean that everything you've seen is approved or has been vetted. That means those are some of the higher scoring or higher ranking things, or that we saw them mentioned more than once. These are suggestions. This is not even a menu, a fully formed menu at all. So these are thoughts. So these are design concepts that we'd like to put in front of you. And maybe a lot of people will say yes, maybe a lot of people will say no, and we'll know more about it. And we'll show you what you told us when we come back at the following meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think this is a good question for our resource management team. Mary is asking, what types of trees are we planning on adding? And before she jumps in here, I just want to mention we do have a resident tree expert. Dario Lombardo is on our team, and he tells us everything we need to know about existing trees and what's going to work well in different climates and different areas. So we'll definitely be working closely with him about any trees or vegetation that are added. But knowing that and knowing the specific area, Anna, do you have any ideas for what could potentially be planted here?
I think that's a great question. I'm really excited that that question was asked. As a biologist, I prefer native trees personally. And in your feedback for the surveys, if you could please provide what trees you would like to see at the park, it would be greatly appreciated, because we will be working closely with our tree expert. We haven't decided what trees will be planted yet, but again, being a fan of native trees, that is more on the agenda versus non-native, but whatever you'd like to see at the park, it's your park, please let us know and we'll be happy to try and accommodate. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Anna. And I think April had a question that was related to that one, asking if they are replaced, will they be the same size? So I'm assuming that's trees. If we do have to replace a tree, we have options. We have seedlings that we actually grow within our own facilities from acorns that we harvest on site. We also, on occasion, will purchase big box trees, and those are definitely more expensive, and there's a much more a stronger labor process that's involved and equipment that's necessary to get those trees in. But I think both are options. So it would kind of come back to that budget question, right? That Nick was addressing, that once we put all the amenities in there, what do we have left for a lot of those add-ons and for the vegetation plan? Did I miss anything there?
No, the only thing I would add was we're going to work hard to absolutely minimize, if not completely avoid, removing any trees at all. We don't want to remove any, but there may be some places where it just makes sense to put something else, and we'll talk about that, but that's a value judgment from the community. But we intend to plant a lot of trees as part of this project. And speaking of Dario, who you just mentioned, the county's tree expert also has a tree program where he can help us get access to a lot of trees, which will really be a cost saving. So tree planting is a budget-friendly addition that we can make in this park. So we're very excited about bringing more trees and ultimately tree canopy. Some of them will have to grow up and become mature in order to provide shade. So we'll ask for your patience, but that's true of park building around the country. That's everywhere. We have to ask for you to, in some cases, picture how good this will look in 5 or 10 years. But we absolutely want to get a lot more trees in the ground and recapture some of the canopy and some of the magic that was lost in the fires. So we're looking forward to that.
Great, thank you. So this next question, I'd like to kind of jump down here. This one's from Dennis, and he's asking who's going to maintain the new plantings? And that is definitely an operational question. So I'd like to have Joe jump on here and respond to that one.
Sure, yeah. So as part of the project, we're looking to increase staff resources and also our operating budget so that we have the resources and the funds to properly maintain all the new amenities. So essentially right now, what we're looking at is expanding our existing work group with some additional staff members so that we can properly maintain whatever new amenities are put in, but also along with the tree maintenance and the vegetation maintenance, et cetera.
Great, thanks, Joe. And one more question from Dennis. It's related to that. How will the maintenance mowing be performed and on what schedule, since it looks like right now it's seriously lacking?
Thanks, Dennis, for that question. Yeah, so I can't give you a schedule right now. Again, we would have to look at what the final design is going to be for the site to establish, one, what the actual needs are going to be maintenance-wise, how much additional staffing we're going to need, how much additional funding we're going to need to purchase services and supplies. And then we can start working on the maintenance schedule from there. Additionally, we'll be looking at other resources, that could potentially supplement our existing work group and any new staff that we get as part of this project. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there, and we're looking forward to taking advantage of those. But as far as the schedule, I can't quite provide that yet, but hopefully soon.
All right, thanks, Joe. Candy in here mentioned that SDG&E has a tree giveaway program that the community could potentially be involved in. So Candy's asking if there's a possibility to look into donations from them. That might be a Nick question.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to hear from you, Candy. I hope you saw our fire accesses in the south. I was glad that Jeremy pointed those out for you. I remember you mentioning this program, and you and I can absolutely continue to talk about that. Absolutely. I know you know how to reach me, and I know how to reach you too.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Sure.
Another question that came in from Candy is how the potential drought could affect what we plant. And I think that's a good question for Anna, since she's so close to all of the biodiversity in that specific space. So Anna, do you want to talk about what we typically plant?
That's a great question. And that ties back into planting natives preference over non-natives again, is because our native species are more tolerant to the droughts that we naturally have here. In addition to that, we would also be actively watering them for the projects wherever we plant trees or even seedlings, any type of plant. We actively water and make sure that they grow up nice and strong and So that's what we would be doing to make sure that the trees survive. So if for some reason we go back into a drought, which is very possible, of course, then we would be watering the trees and the plants to make sure that they maintain during that time.
Okay, and if I I know looking at some of the other parks that we have that are in some drier, warmer areas, I know our rangers hand water a lot of those trees and plants just to make sure they're getting the, the moisture that they need. Okay, so there's a comment in here from Judy. She's asking if anybody from CREST was involved in our planning meetings, and she does reference the total number of participants. Kind of like last time, we send out the communications for these meetings, and it's not always a convenient time for all. So even if we don't have a lot of people who are in this meeting, a lot of people do access the recorded version, and people take the survey. So when we saw, when Nick shared the survey results, even though we didn't have that many people at the last meeting, we certainly got quite a few responses, which was wonderful. But Nick, could you talk a little more about the outreach process for this meeting and kind of up until this point?
Sure. Well, when we first kicked this project off in March, we started by sending out mailers. We sent a total of 2,300, or approximately 2,300 mailers out to zip codes and communities surrounding the park itself. And then we had our first public meeting on April 8th. We had a follow-up public meeting with the CREST Community Association in May, which was great. And during that time, we had circulated our first public survey, where we had a total response of 121 completed surveys. We're very happy about that. In addition, I've been able to actually meet with a handful of people on site, and I've shared a number of great phone calls with a handful of people. I heard Denny giving his feedback again tonight. And I received about 30 emails, which I received, processed, responded to, and engaged in conversation that way. We sent out another 2,300 mailers ahead of this meeting tonight. We have a good turnout. I'm happy about tonight's turnout. And our second survey is open. So we want everybody's feedback, Judy. We'd love to have yours too. If you have any questions or you feel like you've missed anything, the next slide and the last slide we show tonight will be my phone number and my email, and I'll be glad to show you or discuss anything with you to make sure that you feel fully filled in. But if you know of anyone else who that we'd like to connect with, or you think we should connect with, please let me know when we talk.
Great, thank you for that quick recap.
Sure.
All right, so there's a couple comments in here about animal evacuation, and I think that ties back to our general relationship with fire agencies and safety personnel in the region. This might be something that Crystal would like to speak to, just based on her position with an RMD and the close relationships we have with these types of work groups.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Wildfire is something that, especially in an area like this where we've seen it before, is certainly an important part of our analysis. And so we work really closely with County Fire on this type of thing. So we analyze this in two different ways. So when we're actually doing the design of the project, we look at the wildland urban interface and do an analysis with the help of County Fire to see, could the project cause an undue potential for additional wildfire? And so in that consideration, of course, we ensure that the project will not do that. So that's kind of in the design phase. And then moving forward operationally, we continue to work with County Fire as well. They weigh in on our design for things like evacuation. Is there enough room for turnaround of large vehicles, considerations such as that? And we make sure that those things are considered as part of the plan.
Great, thanks, Crystal. Okay, we had a material question from Mary. I'm thinking this might have to do with the nature play discussion during the concept design part of this meeting. But Mary's asking, are we using real wood? And are we considering the safety and life of the project? And I can't confirm for materials, but I think a lot of the wood that we use is treated. But I might hand this one over to Jeremy to talk about the types of materials that we use.
Yeah, the idea was just trying to convey the look of a natural play area. There's different ways to do that, and it's sometimes there's a lot of faux materials that make it look natural. Like sometimes there will be a tree log that is actually built to look, it's made out of concrete but looks like a real tree log. It's not necessarily a real tree or real wood. So there's a lot of, and sometimes you can do a real tree and real wood. So it varies, and it's very open to final design decisions. We were just trying to convey the idea of, is this a natural look for a playground area? Is that something that the community would be interested in?
Great, thank you. And speaking of tree stumps, we have a question from Paula saying that the east side of the park is full of tree stumps. Will these be removed? And this is a question either for Nick or Jeremy.
I think Nick would say the same thing, is that it's to be determined. I don't think we've made any sort of design commitments about removing tree stumps. If that's something that's desired, I think that's something worth mentioning in the survey. You know, if there are some in areas, you know, if there's a decision to move with an open lawn or an open off-leash dog area and there's tree stumps, we would certainly remove them in areas we're improving. But in some of the more open areas, I think that's to be determined. So something worth mentioning if that's a concern.
All right, thank you. And there's a semi-related question to that. This one comes from David. David's asking if we could or would incorporate some of the concepts from both of the different designs that you shared tonight into the plan, if that's dictated. And I think, yes, 100%. This next survey is taking a look at those two design concepts and telling us what you like about each, what you don't like about each, and what's missing. So if you want to see an amenity that has not been included in that, we might have just missed it or it wasn't included in a previous survey response, this is a great chance for you to share those thoughts. And then when we get the results of the next survey, what are next steps? Do we see 2 additional concepts or 1 concept? And I'll hand that to Nick.
Our third meeting will be when we present a park master plan. That's the intent. That way we want to keep moving. That way we will be able to move forward and into our first round of improvements.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a few questions related to park operations. Mary is asking if we do have a community garden, if that's the preferred amenity for the group here, would the county pay for the water? And I'm assuming the answer is yes to that, but I'm gonna let Joe confirm.
Yes, so the county would be paying for the utility. However, I do want to mention that typically with our community garden, there is some sort of fee associated with folks that want to essentially, I don't know if lease is the right term, but lease like a plot for their community, for their garden. So there could potentially be some fees associated with that. But as far as the utility, we would take care of paying the utility for that amenity.
Okay, great. And then looking at park maintenance overall, of course, the rangers have their daily duties and they come through and have different tasks that they need to complete to keep that park looking good. Dennis is asking if we are planning to work with a volunteer group to help us assist with that maintenance plan.
Hey, we're always looking for volunteers. So Dennis, if you want to volunteer, if you know folks that want to volunteer in the community, we're always open to any additional resources that we can get to make the park look as nice as possible. You know, we do have a robust volunteer program of our own. We've put some feelers out there. Unfortunately, we have not heard much back, but if there are folks in the community itself that are excited to participate and help enhance the current condition of the park, we're all ears and we're here for that. So please get a hold of me. You can do that through Nick. I think his contact information is on the last slide here. And I'm happy to, you know, talk to folks that are interested in participating to help us improve the condition of the park as it is right now.
Great, thanks, Joe. So we had a follow-up to the comments that Crystal just recently made about wildfires. And Eric is asking if we're considering, or that we're considering wildfires with this particular project. And he's asking if the park will be an animal sanctuary in times of need. I think that's, Crystal can certainly respond to that question. I know from past experience, we work closely with safety personnel and emergency services. And if they ask for a space, we open the space to them. So we work very closely with them, as do our rangers. But Crystal, do you want to add anything else to that about animal sanctuaries and that ongoing relationship?
Sure. And the only thing that I would add is the site is already in a wildfire protection plan. That's a county plan, and it's identified as an evacuation site. And so that's not just for humans, that's for animals as well, of course. So that's definitely part of our consideration.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. Okay, so Nick, if you could pull back up some of the design concepts. Robin's asking, or saying that she would like to see parking for the horse trailers and trucks that's not on the lawn. And sometimes I know the coloring of these maps is a little tough to decipher what's lawn, what's dirt, but if you can point out what the suggested materials would be in that parking area, that'd be great.
Jeremy, do you want to jump in, or I can take this?
Yeah, I can kind of go over it again. Sorry if it wasn't clear the first time. Sometimes, as Jessica mentioned, you know, looking at these the first time, it might not be as clear. So, you know, the idea is on both of the concepts is to enhance the existing parking lot. And what we're looking at here in concept A on the screen is a concept where we improve the parking lot circulation and layout while also adding some equestrian trailer pull-through parking spots in the middle. So those equestrian trailers have a clear and distinct place to park and unload their horses and reload them up. So in concept A, you know, we have these equestrian stalls in kind of the center, and then traditional parking stalls off to the right. This would be some sort of natural material for the surface to be determined. It could be like a rock or a gravel. It could be decomposed granite. And that would kind of be the consistent materials throughout. We're trying to avoid doing anything with hard paving like asphalt or concrete or something of that nature. So then if we can skip ahead to concept B, and that was a picture of the decomposed granite materials. So concept B is more of a circular layout where the parking is on the perimeter and the edges. The center is vegetated with landscaping. And then the equestrian area by number 7 is more of a drop-off kind of, you know, it's like a drop-off zone, but you could still pull your trailer here, park it, unload it, and then enter into the arena. So it's out of the way of the main circulation. So it's wider through this area. So trailers can essentially just pull off to the side out of the main circulation and unload their equestrians. Again, similar materials. And then I do think there was a question that came in about the drainage that comes through this area, and the existing parking lot is often wet. And we did observe that. We did talk to the park ranger about that when we went out to the site and we looked at it. So when we redo these parking areas, we're going to address the drainage that happens through this area and try to improve that situation so that it flows away from the parking lot and down closer to the vegetation down below, and try to improve the situation that's out there today.
Great, thank you. We have a related question from Anna. Anna is saying she's concerned that if the pathways are natural dirt, after one rain, they could become difficult to use with ruts, potholes, and eventually weeds. Is there an option to keep those paths usable? And so Joe, do you want to speak a little bit about trail maintenance at our parks and what our rangers do to kind of reinforce some of those main thoroughfares?
Sure. I think the biggest piece is that our normal practice is to shut down, you know, trail systems after significant rain events to be able to properly restore them. And we do have a trails crew that is trained specifically on trail maintenance that we will bring in for maybe some of the more heavy duty projects. But once these new amenities are in and these new pathways are in, et cetera, we would definitely have to explore, you know, after rain events significant enough, if we need to shut them down for a period of time to make sure we can properly restore them and make them safe for everyone to use. And so that would include, you know, restoring the path itself, making sure we're getting rid of any, you know, potholes, weeds, all of that as part of that process. So we do have folks that are trained specifically to be able to provide this maintenance when things like that happen.
Jessica, I'll add something to that as well for Anna. When trails are constructed in the first place, you have an opportunity to build them in ways that they can respond well to weather. So we're looking at doing 2 different things, particularly for the largest trail, the biggest trail, and the main circulation trail, we want to be 6 foot wide and generally flat. So that provides access for people of a range of abilities, right? Almost anyone will be able to get around on the large main circulation trail. But when we construct it, we'll build it in a way that it can handle some weather, and we'll compact the top of it so it's pretty firm And then we'll use a material where we can recompact it at different intervals if or when that maintenance is necessary. But the best way to get a trail to do well over time and to do well in weather is to build it right the first place. And that's what we'll do when we come in and create new trails here.
Great, thank you, Nick.
Sure.
Okay, so I think that answers Butch's question. Butch was asking if we had plans to improve waterways. Are there any other plans to take a look at the existing waterways within the park and what we might be able to do to improve them during flood events?
Our plan right now is to avoid the waterway and to let it remain in its current state.
Okay, thank you. All right, Candy's got some good suggestions here. Candy says we might want to consider the dog area or play area as a science outdoor school classroom. Love that idea. Boulders are a great idea for seating. If the philosophy is to bring underserved children to the backcountry, make sure that buses have the space to pull in and out. Great recommendation, thank you. And then of course to remember that this is still an evacuation center. So all good stuff here. We've got it captured in the meeting. Please also include it in the survey so we have that listed there in our responses and we can report out on that in the next meeting. Okay, let's see here. Do we have any plans for bathrooms? That question comes in from Brianna.
We do not. We do not. If the community tells us that's important to them, we can look into that, but we don't have a plan for that at this time. We didn't receive a lot of support or even suggestions for it or about it. So they're not currently a part of the plan. However, people can give us whatever input they like, and we want to know what's important to you. So please, Brianna, if it's important to you, you'd like to have them, you can let us know in the survey.
Awesome, thank you. And on that note, Faber is saying this is a small park and they would like to not see as much of the existing greenery covered by wide walkways and parking, which could reduce the natural beauty of the park. Really great commentary. Thank you for that. Of course, we would be adding some additional vegetation to kind of maintain that green space feeling. And those pathways would only be as wide as necessary to accommodate all users. But this is really great feedback for us, knowing that you want to keep that kind of natural feel to this particular property. So please also include that in the survey when you take that. Okay, so let's see. Katie's saying proposal A seemed to have more amenities than proposal B. Does the budget allow for all of the amenities to be added? Were the proposals created keeping the budget in mind, or were they just created by adding all of the community feedback together into two different proposals?
I'm so glad that you asked this question. This is a challenge. So we are creating a park plan that will create a list of improvements, a number of different things that could be done over the future, over future years and upcoming budget cycles. The amount of budget that we have now will be enough to do a couple of these things in our very first round of improvements. So this entire outreach process is to come up with an overall plan for the park. And after we have an overall plan for the park, we'll be able to select a couple of the things to be our first set of improvements. We'll come in, we'll make those improvements, and then in successive budget years with the county, we'll be able to ask for, or you'll be able to ask for, or the park will be able to obtain additional funding for additional rounds of improvements. So we're going to come up with a park master plan that says this is the total number of improvements we'd like to make, and we'll be able to make a few of them with the budget that we have currently. And also to clarify again, it's neither, it doesn't have to be A or B. A shows a number of different items and B shows a number of different items. And you can say, I like these kind of things you showed in A. I don't like these things you showed in A. I do like these things in B. And once we hear from you guys about all the different components, that's what will come back. That's what you'll see when we come back with a park master plan.
Great, thanks, Nick.
Sure.
You mentioned the budget again, so I want to jump down to a question or comment that Ben had. Ben's asking how much of the budget has already been spent and how much of the budget will be used toward drafting the design plans.
I don't have exact figures. We haven't spent much, certainly not, very little, and the vast majority would go to construction.
Perfect. Okay. On that note, when does construction start?
So we will be able to give you that information when we come back and we have a master plan. And once we know what our first round of improvements are, that will determine our construction timeline. we'll know what it is we're being asked or directed to build. We'll know whether that triggers any additional environmental review or other things. And we'll have an idea of not only how long it takes to build that, but what the process is to prepare the construction drawings, to go out to bid and to bring on qualified contractors. So we can't quite answer that yet, but we expect to have a lot more focus at our next meeting.
Okay, so Romero, we're gonna have to wait on that. Romero wanted to know how long the park would be closed for construction. The answer is TBD. We will know more once we have a final design plan. All right, let's see here. So Ted had a comment about the materials that are used. He says, with proposing DG trails and crest, which is all DG, can you commit to using on-site DG and not truck in stabilized commercial DG for the trails? That's a great question. Materials, would that be a Jeremy question or a Nicholas question?
I think we can both answer it. I don't think we'd be able to get that much material from the site. I think we'll have to bring in import.
Yeah, exactly. I think the intent is we're trying to minimize grading and impacts to the overall site, and to excavate that amount of DG would be detrimental to the park.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. Has anybody involved in the planning process walked through crest? That's Judy's question. So I imagine all of the people here on the call have been through this particular property. Joe, Nick, Jeremy, any idea how many times you've walked the perimeter?
I've been to the park 6 times. I walked my dog through the park and a little bit around the park. I've been up to the library, the church, the school. I wish I remember the name of the resident who I met who lives to the east of the park. And I actually have met a couple other residents during my walks around. But I've been there a number of times so far.
Okay. Great. I know Joe visits too, because it's park that she oversees. All right. CoreyCC@gmail.com wants to know if we can add some type of bike path. And so can we talk about the paths that are being created? Are they bike friendly? Are they stroller friendly, wheelchair friendly?
So some of that's to be determined. One of the things that we offered in our previous survey was whether the community might wish to have trails with bike specific features added into them. And there was some response for that, but it wasn't terribly strong. What was a stronger response was the second of the two things you described, Jessica, where there's a broad range of access for the broadest range of users. We don't yet have ideas in mind about whether or not bikes would be allowed or disallowed. That's not been contemplated. We're still talking to the community about what's important to them. But the main thing that we're hearing about trails is that the most people want to make sure that there's as much access for as many people as possible, which generally means pretty flat. One scenario I could see would be, if you guys can see here on the map, that these pop-outs may have a little bit more potential to be sort of more bike friendly or bike interested. So that's something that we can look at as well.
Okay. And then Ben is talking kind of on that same topic. Ben is saying the entrances are nearly impossible to get strollers through. Will the new entrances be more family friendly?
I think that's a great point. I've been there a number of times with different design groups, and those are very different, I will say. Those are different. That's a different entrance style. I suspect that style of entrance didn't last very long because they're not very user friendly, even for someone who's fully able, let alone with the stroller. So I think that's a great point. We are looking at improving access at a number of different locations. And I think that's a great point too, to make sure that we're friendly to everybody, particularly up at the Northwest, where we know that there are families, especially if that becomes a play area, and particularly in the South, where there might be anything from a dog park to a gazebo to community gardening or anything that would attract a variety of different people. So I think that's a great point.
All right, so David Silva asks, how can we propose to protect the new amenities from large trucks during rain events? I think it's also helpful maybe to talk about what we do in our operations team. When we have large rain events, there are some properties that we close altogether. We close the staging areas, we close the trails because of the damage that those vehicles could do to the ground. Joe, do you want to talk about any of the properties that we close because of rain, or the trails that we close because of rain?
I think it just varies from facility to facility and just how significant of a rain event we're seeing. But it does happen throughout our park system where there are several facilities throughout the county where trails have to be shut down, staging areas need to be shut down so that we can properly restore them to their previous, if not better condition, and make them safe for the public to enjoy again. So that's definitely something that we would practice here. I know we've done it maybe a couple times in the last year or two where we've had to shut down the staging area while we perform some repairs at this site specifically. But I think in addition to that, we would be looking at installing some additional measures, like maybe, a sturdier gate, that really prevents any kind of after hours access or trespassing if we have shut it down, essentially, people still trying to get through. So there is, other options that we could work with Nick and his team and the consultant on making sure that we can properly secure these areas when we do need to shut them down, or even to close them at the end of the day. So lots of options there, and we will be exploring all of those as part of the process.
And just so you guys know, since I oversee our web and social channels, when we do have to close a property because of heavy rain or flooding, we post signs on site. We make sure that the gates are shut. We also staff rangers in the area to make sure that people are aware that that specific space is closed. We have posted to our website. We actually have a park updates page on sdparks.org that's all about temporary closures. And so the information goes there. And then if it's a pretty significant event that could potentially close an area for more than a day, we may also post it to our social media channels, which include Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So just as we kind of have the operational plan, to close an area, we also have a communications plan to make sure the public is aware of those adjustments. All right, let's see what other questions we have. We're getting through the list. Thank you guys for your patience. All right, so Eric is asking if it's possible to stabilize the existing DG without having to import more. And that would probably have to do with the addition of any new pathways or the expansion of them, but I will let Nick answer that question.
I don't think there's very much DG on the side, actually. I think what we see there is there's gravel in the parking area, and the existing trails are hardened, just weather hardened, native materials. So I think that in order to provide new trails and new circulation, we would construct new trails, which would be built with DG. And if you guys have an aversion to that, let us know. Let us know what that's about, and we can talk about what alternative materials there might be. We source, or I have so far with the county, sourced DG from local quarries, and they're tested for safety. But if you guys have concerns about that, let us know by all means. The material that exists in the parking area now is, I think, a mix of native material and gravel. But as Jeremy mentioned, that would be regraded. We would reconstruct that to really do a much better job with drainage and rain events. So that would receive a new surface as well.
Okay, and I imagine we're going to be looking at all of the areas where water could be running off and doing what we could to channel them to the appropriate locations.
Absolutely, required by law, and we do it well. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Looking at the concept plans, I didn't see it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Are there any bridges that are proposed to go over the waterways?
There are a few. That's a great point. And these are things that may have to happen in the future. Some of the improvements that are proposed are things that can happen fairly directly without much additional study or survey or environmental review. Some of the things might require a little bit more care, but you can see here, there are a few places where bridges are shown to move you up over that earthen channel. Here's one example where there's just a few, but we absolutely want to connect a lot of the park so people can have more of a meandering, fuller walk through the park, or can simply get to different areas more quickly once they park. But we're showing a few. We'd like your feedback on those as well. So I'm very thankful for whoever brought that up. Thank you. And by the way, I'd like to add, Jessica, I received a message, a follow-up message from someone with regard to the question about the natural play area or the natural play features, which could be potentially located in the Northwest up here. We do use natural wood. We actually have used trees just recently. In fact, in some areas fairly close to this park, we use natural materials, including, they're treated with natural, safe preserves as well. So we prefer natural. There's
Would
nothing.
Estrella be a good example of that? For people
Yes, Estrella would be a great example of that. Absolutely.
Okay. That's
Thank
in the Casa de Oro area?
And it's been so popular. People have absolutely loved it. Another one was way up at Santa Isabel, the Santa Isabel Nature Center. But if people can either go to or even just look up Estrella Park, it has been a great success, and it really sparks the imagination of the young visitors. It's very cool.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so Judy's mentioning once again, wildfires. I know that's something that's on everybody's mind in this area because of the effect of the Cedar Fire. And it looks like, so what Judy's saying is the 2003 Cedar Fire swept through parts of Crest that are in the general area of our plan. So yes, we're aware of that. And that's why it's so important for us to work closely with our local fire agencies to maintain the site as an evacuation space, but also to take a look at any way we can to mitigate the risk of wildfire through this area. It's one of those tough situations we're kind of in almost all parts of San Diego on a now almost annual basis. So but I feel your fear there, and I hope we can reassure you that we are working closely with the proper agencies to make this park as safe as possible. It looks like I only have one question left after that, and this is from Mary asking if the volunteers who work with the county are insured by the county. And that is a great question, and that may depend on the volunteer group and whether or not they're employed through our own volunteer coordinator. Joe, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you just said. So we have various kind of levels or tiers, if you will, of volunteers. The ones that would be covered under the county typically are the ones that go through kind of an application and vetting process that includes a medical and background process. So for sure, those individuals be covered under the county. If it's a group that's just coming out for a one-time, those typically are waivers that need to be signed by participants. So that would be the case for those types of groups. But anyone working in an official capacity with the county as a volunteer would very likely be fully insured by the county.
Great, thank you. And then Katie's got a great question here. So knowing that the budget will require some of these improvements to be done in phases or over the course of years, who determines what amenities get done first? Katie would imagine that individual residents would have different opinions about what should happen first. And do they have a say in that process? So Nick, this seems like a great question for you.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're headed. We want to come up with, and again, I'm just parked on Concept A. I'm not trying to sell this or say that it's better than the other, but we will come up with a complete park plan, which says, these are all the things that you guys told us that you'd like to see over the next period of time as they can be accomplished. And then our next set of questions is, okay, you guys, given the budget we have left and in hopes of getting something done soon, what are the first few things you'd like us to do out of the gate? So you might say that we like this, and this, and we might say, okay, but if you ask for that, it can't be done as soon. Do you still want it? So we'll have a question about that. We won't defer totally to the public because we want to guide something that makes sense and that can get done quickly. But we're going to continue that conversation. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, and Katie had a follow-up comment, and I totally agree with you, Katie. Just to comment that Estrella is such a beautiful natural landscape park. Would love to see that type of play area for our children. It's also beautiful for adults to look at. I fully agree that's such a unique space. It's a park built on a hillside that otherwise you never would have ever envisioned a park. And they've done such cool stuff to build within that hillside, a switchback trail, an amphitheater, all kinds of really fun, nature play features that has definitely been bringing the community out to enjoy the space. So I agree. If any of you here haven't visited that park and you've got time, definitely check it out. Okay, I don't see any other questions in here. In the chat, I did post the link to the survey. Right after this meeting, I'm going to post that link to our website as well. And I put the link to that page, but it's if you go to sdparks.org, under the plans tab, there's another button for public meetings, and the information for this meeting is right there at the top. So the survey is going to be there, but it's also in the chat, and it was shared here. And I believe we've got 2 weeks, right, Nick, for people to take that survey?
Yep, 2 weeks.
Awesome. So please, anything you shared here, double share it in that survey so we have it extra recorded for the next meeting. And then what are next steps? Can you remind us when that next meeting could potentially be?
Well, we don't know exactly what the timelines are because the next plan will depend somewhat on what we hear. So we're giving ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. We're saying we're coming back in fall of this year.
Okay, great. Just so you all know how to reach Nick, his phone number and email are also in the chat. So if you've not had a direct conversation with him yet and you really want to, or you've got additional feedback you want to share outside of the survey, please feel free to reach out to him directly. And as he mentioned, we're keeping tabs on every single comment that comes through to make sure that everything gets addressed. So I think my time is done here. I've been proud to be your host. Thank you for all of the great questions. Eric, thank you. You're welcome. And I'm going to hand it back over to Nick.
I will just echo my thanks as well. My thanks to you, Jessica. Another great job. Thank you to everyone on the team. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us. And I want to thank the community. As I mentioned during the presentation, we've gotten a lot of feedback. It's a strong amount of feedback given the relatively small population in this area, but you guys are obviously tight knit. And just like the survey information showed us, those of you who are near the park feel very strongly about the park, and you've given us great things to go on. Please contact me if you have any questions, concerns, if you feel like you need more detail, if you feel like you haven't been heard. I've gotten to meet a good number of you now, and I've really connected with a number of you. So I feel like it's gone very well, and I'd love to hear from you, and we're looking forward to getting to where we're all trying to go. With that, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. You don't see it here, by the way. I know Jessica put it in the chat. You do see my email. I should have added my phone number. It's 858-860-6010, 858-860-6010. That's in the chat, or you'll see it if you send me an email, I'll reply. All right. Thank you all to everybody for your involvement and for your input, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much. Have a good night.